Hello and welcome to The Winding Road. I'm your host, Claire Markwick, and I am thrilled to be here. This is a show for the everyday leader, for the community leader, for the small business owner, and for those of you who are listening who wouldn't even consider yourself to be leaders. I'll be bringing you unique stories of real life leadership from across the Albury-Wodonga region to inspire, to empower, and to educate. Throughout this series, I aim to bust the widely held belief that leadership is this corporate buzzword tied to years of tenure or qualification or title. I want you to see through these conversations that it is so much more than that. Each episode also has its own ebook companion, so be sure to head to the show notes section of wherever you're watching or listening to this from to download your free resource and get the most out of this series. Alrighty then, let's get into it. In this conversation, I am speaking with Fiona Nash. Fiona is Charles Sturt University's Strategic Advisor of Regional Engagement and Government Relations. Having grown up in Sydney, Fiona spent most of her adult life living and working in regional New South Wales. For many years, she was involved in a farming enterprise in New South Wales Central West, which her sons Will and Henry are now running. Fiona spent 12 years in federal parliament as Senator for New South Wales and also held ministerial positions, including rural health. In cabinet, she held positions of regional development, regional communications, and local and government territories. And she was also the deputy leader of the Nationals. What I loved about this conversation the most was how easily it flowed because of how real and down to earth Fiona is. We crammed so much in. The power of relationships and collaboration, the fact that every day is an opportunity to learn, even the bad ones, the dangers of comparison, the need to be humble, and different ways that we can look at failure. I know that there is so much you can take away from this episode, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Fiona, thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm absolutely loving facilitating these conversations because I think no matter where we're at in our leadership journey or our business journey or what we're doing, there's always so much that we can learn from other people, isn't there? And hearing the real life journey and development that other people have gone through, I think is really, really beneficial. So I'm super grateful to be here having this conversation with you. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, Claire, I am delighted to be here as well.
Awesome. Now, in the introduction, we heard that you are now, and I'm going to read this, the Strategic Advisor of Regional Engagement and Government Relations at Charles Sturt University. Now, to me, that's a massive mouthful. Can you just elaborate a little bit, share a bit about what the primary purpose of that role is?
It is a mouthful, and I think I should probably redefine that title at some point. Effectively what I do for the uni, Claire. I've been here about 3.5 years now, and it's a blend really of the community engagement that the university does. I sort of oversight all of our community engagement. We've got 4 fantastic directors of external engagement across our 6 campuses. We've got a really large footprint. So I oversight the community engagement and regional development side of the university, and also do all of the government relations work for the university. So our connectivity into state and federal governments, oppositions, crossbenchers, MPs, and right down to local government as well. So it's really varied and it's great fun. I really love it.
Yeah, and I guess obviously tapping into a lot of that, the political experience from your background as well in doing all that sort of logistical stuff with government liaison and things.
Absolutely. And one of the things I've found that's been really helpful, I think, for the university is because I've been around for so long now in regional communities and around politics. I just got a lot of relationships. So literally just simplistically know a lot of people, which has been really helpful because I think those relationships and what you do is with those is really important. And so much of the world is just about people, and particularly in this job. So I've been really pleased that I've been able to bring that for the uni.
It's really interesting you say that. I remember back in my early 20s, one of my sort of first proper jobs where I felt like I've really started to know what I'm doing. I was in a public practice accounting firm in Western Australia, and they started talking about the importance of us going to networking events and, mingling and meeting local people, other professionals, other service providers, and just business community members. And I remember then I was scared shitless, for want of a better word, of doing that. And I really didn't see the value. I was like, well, I'm just me. Who's going to want to connect with me? But I think over these 20 years of my career and my business development, I too have realized how important relationships are and networking are. Is that a really big, important feature for you too, building those collaborative relationships?
It really is. And I can't stand the word networking. I wish someone could come up with something better, but anyway, I can't come up with something better. But for a word for what it means, it is really important, because quite often it doesn't matter how big the issue is or what you're trying to do. Often you just need to tap into the right person, get the outcome that you want or what you need to be done. And so it's just that thing, I met that person back there and they'll probably be able to help me with that, or I know this person existing and I know absolutely that they've got exactly what I need. So it's the sort of knowing who's who at the zoo and who fits where, and being able to tap into that wonderful bunch and group of people that you might have as a resource. It's really important. And it's interesting because when you're talking about people and human relationships, if you're talking about something solid and structured like a document or information, it's very tangible, but human relationships are a lot less tangible. So putting a value on those is often much harder.
Absolutely. And I think for me, speaking from my personal experience in those days, very early in my career, I was under the misconception that I couldn't possibly go to an event like that with successful leaders and business owners, because I didn't know enough. Like, I didn't know everything about the world of business and the world of leadership. And I think that's a common misconception that I come across, that people don't necessarily consider themselves to be leaders or even leadership potential because they don't know enough yet, or they're not experienced enough. Is that something that you've experienced either personally or sort of through your journey?
Oh, it is so true, Claire. It's so true. And what people don't realize, and I've been in those situations as well, and I'm not sort of a natural people person, like walking into a room full of people I've never been all that comfortable with. It got easier over time, but certainly early on it was very, very difficult. But what I used to say to myself after a while is, probably at least half the people in the room are thinking exactly the same thing that I am, that they're not feeling like they really should be there, or they don't know enough or whatever. And we always sort of seem to assume that, well, I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people assume that the other people in the room will be smarter than them, or know more than them, or be more experienced than them. And so often it's actually not the case.
Yes.
Much harder to sort of, I think, have the confidence in yourself when you're just not quite sure what you're heading into.
Yeah, it's so funny, isn't it? And I literally had that conversation with someone just the other day. Like, it was an event. I'll keep using that word that neither of us really like, networking. It was a networking event, and it was the first one that this person had actually sort of facilitated. And she said, I'm really, really nervous. I hope it all goes okay. And I was like, well, just remember, I was like, 99.9% of the people coming to this event are going to be really nervous. I'm like, they're going to think anything that you do is amazing because, you're talking, which takes away the emphasis of them talking to that person over there that they're scared of. Everybody is nervous in new situations, aren't they? And again, that's something I've had to learn, and I'm still learning. Like, do you feel that you ever get to a point where you know enough and you're 100% comfortable when you're walking into a new situation? Do you feel like you're ever there?
That's a good question. For me personally, I think it depends what it is. There are some times where, even now I'd still be going, a bit nervy going in there. And other times I think, I can just nail this. So I think it depends. I think it depends very much what the event is and what it is. And it's that, it really is so clear, isn't it? That ability to push yourself outside of your comfort zone and it's hard. It's really hard. And there's nothing worse than that feeling of walking into a room and going, who am I going to speak to? What am I going to say? And will anybody, it's awkward. It's often really awkward, and learning how to deal with awkward, I think is one of the things that's a real trick.
Absolutely. And that's not just specific to networking events, is it? You know, we can go into a role and think, you know, oh my God, like everybody here knows what they're doing. They're all over everything. And practically the day-to-day stuff of how the systems work and who reports into who, yes, they maybe do have their head around that better than us if we're brand new in that role. But in terms of the mental headspace of them having everything together and knowing everything about everything and being 100% comfortable with every decision they need to make and every progression they need to take, like that's another big fallacy, isn't it? Like that everybody else has essentially got their shit together and we're the only ones that feel like the imposter or the newbie or the greenie.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, if you think about it, everybody's had their first day once. So everybody's in that position when they've started. They might look super confident and super experienced when you walk in on the first day, but they've had their first day too, and they probably feel exactly the same as you do on the first day. And so, you know, it sort of swings around about. Everyone's got to start somewhere, a new job or a new place or a new thing.
Yeah.
You just have to accept that you're not on a first day ever going to think, hey, I've got this nailed, I know everything, because you just don't. You can't.
Exactly. And I don't know about you, but I don't ever think that I don't believe that we can ever get to a point where we know everything and where we know enough to feel 100% comfortable going into every single situation. Like we were just saying in the before we started the recording that I've just run a masterclass in my business coaching hub, and it was all about stress. And the facilitator there was saying that we're never going to get to a point where we don't feel stress anymore. Like stress will always be there. We will just have more tools and more resources and be better able to work ourselves through it. But that doesn't mean we get to a point where stress isn't there anymore.
Absolutely.
And I think that kind of translates through to sort of our leadership skills and our confidence in our roles, doesn't it?
Yep. And there's different levels of stress to manage. And I think if you actually ever did, gosh, I never have, but if you'd ever got to the point where you thought, yep, I know everything I need to know and I'm as informed as I possibly can be and there's nothing else I need to know or learn, that's probably when you hit a really bad spot, because at that point you start getting really complacent. So if you always feel a bit like there's more to learn and more to gain and more to do, and then you'll that constant learning is a really good thing, because then you don't get stale and you don't get, oh yeah, I know everything now.
That's it. The only way to go from there is down, isn't it?
What's the only way is down? Absolutely.
That's
upward trajectory.
Exactly. That's a mindset thing in itself, isn't it? Like, again, that's something that looking back over a successful career, we can realize we've learned, or we can accept. Someone starting out right at the bottom, like maybe they're in their first leadership role, or maybe their first real job after leaving school or university, like can think, oh my God, like there is such a mountain to climb. Like I've got so much I need to learn. And we can feel like real imposters, can't we? But I think that mindset shift of there's always something to learn, and that's not a bad thing. That's actually a really good thing.
It's a really good thing.
Is a really empowering sort of belief to have, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you've learned about yourself throughout your career? That's a big question.
That's a really good question, Claire. That is quite true. I am tougher than I thought I was when I sort of started out. And I think with anything, with any job, with any occupation, with anything in life, you do hit spots that are hard, or things happen that you have to deal with that are really, really difficult. And the learning to deal with the things that happen that you have to get through, and also learning from it. So, you know, that doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And learning from it, I think, right, okay, I really wish that hadn't happened, but it did. And how can I actually use that as a positive and not a negative? And that sounds simple in hindsight, because at the time you're going, So that's the technical phrase.
You'll find that in all the leadership textbooks.
Exactly. But then afterwards, I just go, right, okay, how has that equipped me? That really rotten thing that just happened, how has that equipped me to do better? And that's really important. So yeah, what I've learned about, I'm tougher than I thought I was. I think the more you go through the world and life, the more you realize things aren't black and white. And I look sort of at young me, and I was very kind of, this is black, this is white, and this is the way the world is. And then over time got a lot more, I suppose, hang on, there are shades of grey in all of this, and there's shades of grey everywhere. So I think I learned to be more flexible and more accepting. And what else did I learned, I think, to not beat myself up if I didn't get everything right.
That's a big one, isn't it?
And to just accept that not everything will always go right. You won't always get what you want to happen. Things will go wrong, and you will make, stupid decisions. But you just have to accept, I think, that you're not perfect, and as long as you sort of try hardest, that's the best you can do.
Oh my gosh, I absolutely
and try really hard at trying hardest.
I'm reminded of that all the time by my 8-year-old. I'll pick him up on something, like he'll forget to bring his plate through to the kitchen or something. That's probably more my 11-year-old than my 8-year-old. But anyway, he'll say things like, he says, "Mum, I'm not perfect. I'm 8, and mistakes are how I learn."
Oh, champion.
And I'm like, oh, God bless you, child.
I think a post in the diplomatic service coming up, maybe.
That's the thing, isn't it? And I also picked up on something else that you said there, whether you had conscious awareness of saying it or not, but it's something that I certainly pick up in my kids, and I certainly pick it up with my clients as well, in as much as how we talk to ourselves. Like you said, I might make some silly decisions or do some silly things, but so many of us, if we've made a poor decision or made a decision that hasn't turned out the way that we thought it might, can say, "Oh God, I'm so stupid," or "God, I'm such an idiot." And we attach that sort of we put a lot of weight on ourselves when we do that, don't we? And we if we're doing that all the time, we're going to start to believe that we're an idiot, aren't we? And then
it is so true. And that positive mindset of how you do things is so important. It's a really good example, and I just did it there, didn't I? But just going, it's okay not to get everything right. Just don't beat yourself up about it. Just learn from it and move on to the next thing, and do even better to get the next thing right.
That's it. That was a poor decision. No, I find myself, it's like almost a repeated mantra, particularly for our oldest son. He says, "God, I'm so stupid." I'm like, "No, you're not stupid. You just made a stupid decision right then."
Yeah. And that's it. The thing you do is stupid. You aren't. Like, people, and that's such a good way to sort of differentiate. Okay, I might have done something, but otherwise you just can potentially just end up in a downward spiral, just telling yourself how terrible you are.
Exactly. And I wonder if that's sometimes, because I'm gonna just go out there with a sweeping generalization here and say that women are a lot better or worse at beating, we're a lot better at beating ourselves up than potentially men are. We will go, "Oh God, I'm so bloody stupid," or "Oh, so forgetful." Like we just do it like automatically, I think, don't we? A lot of the time. I say sweeping generalization, I apologize. And I wonder whether that has got anything to do with the fact that there's this divergence between a woman stepping up into a leadership role and a man. Is it this belief that we've sort of almost ingrained in ourselves that we're not good enough, that we're stupid, that we don't know enough?
Oh boy, Claire, you really hit on something there that I have found over the years, over and over and over again. And again, talking about sweeping generalizations, and this is anecdotal, but honestly, it happened so many times. I absolutely back this in. If there's a job on offer, a woman will look at it and go, "Oh, am I qualified enough? Can I do it? Am I good enough? Will people think I'm doing a good enough job? Oh, everyone else is probably better than me that's putting their hand up for it. Can I really manage it? And how will I juggle it with my family? And what will everyone think of me?" A bloke will look at exactly the same job and go, yeah, I can do that. And the bloke might be as qualified as the woman. And it's just this, and again, a sweeping generalization, but one that I think is pretty true in a lot of instances. Women will just second guess themselves so often and put their own high jump bar so much higher than a fellow would, which is, again, a generalization, but gee, it's a good one.
Oh yeah. And I mean, I can say hand on heart that, you know, it comes up for me all the time. It came up for me like 10 minutes before this session. You know, there's an opportunity for my business right now. Information came through about it, and I'm like, oh, I don't know. I actually, now I'm reading all this, I don't know if I can handle it. And I'm like, self-coaching, Claire. Have you had experiences like that as well? Or you know deep down inside you can do things, but you've just got that little voice trying to keep
Oh, absolutely. And I think a really good example of when I was in Parliament and in Cabinet, and, you know, I was the fifth most senior person in the country, and I walk into Cabinet and sit down. I said, oh, now they're going to figure out I shouldn't be here. And it was just not that I was there, and it was fine, and I took the competence in and everything else. And looking back now in hindsight, I was actually really good at it. But at the time, it was that measure against other people going, I'm not at that level. And looking back, I absolutely was. But that questioning at the time, it's interesting.
That whole comparison piece, like, I think it's, you know, I talk about it a lot in the sense of social media, but we can do it even, you know, even sitting in our office, looking across the room at our colleagues. Like, it doesn't have to just be on Instagram or whatever. It's all around us, in as much as when we look at someone, we judge, again, maybe a generalization, but we will generally judge them based on their sort of external facade of what they're presenting. And if they're, you know, if they're dressing very well and they talk very well and they seem to be good at what they do, we just assume that they're just this superhuman who is amazing at absolutely everything. And we'll compare that to our inner crap, to our inner belief about ourselves, won't we? We don't see that external projection of ourselves. We judge. So we're at we're not even comparing apples with apples when we compare ourselves to others, which in itself is a dangerous thing anyway, even if we were comparing apples and apples, but we're not so often, are we?
It's not. And you see the external and you've got no idea of what's actually going on inside that person in the same way it's going on inside you at the time. So you just see the external and you think, oh my God, you know, they've got it so together, they're so capable, they're so confident. And again, back in my old role in Parliament, I used to call it game face. And I'd be going to something and I'd just say to myself, right, game face on, and just step into the role. And I'm sure other people look from outside and thought, you know, I was confident and across everything, and, you know, and hopefully at times I genuinely was, but there were certainly times where it was game face on and I just managed to do it.
And I think there's that in itself, I'm imagining there'll be people watching this that are like, well, isn't that just being fake? You know, isn't that the whole fake it till you make it thing? And I don't know about you, but I hate fake it till you make it with a passion. Like, I hate that terminology. I just don't like it. But I do believe there are situations where we need to act above where we feel we're at right now. So I like to call it act as if. Like, act as if.
That is so much better. I mean, I hate the whole fake it then you make it, you know, till you make it too, and I hate that whole sort of fakeness of that whole thing. But act as if is absolutely spot on, because if you put yourself into the role of the person you want to be at any point in time, whatever you're doing, you kind of morph into it.
You do.
But if you and the reverse would be if you sort of went and going, oh, I can't do this, I can't do this. Of course, you won't be able to do it.
You'll shrink into it.
If you act as if, and, you know, game face on, act as if, you actually morph into being able to do it. And it really does work.
It's such a simple tool, but, you know, okay, I want to be, you know, if there's someone listening to this and you're you're newly in a leadership role, it's like, I want to be the confident leader that inspires my team, that can energize my team, and, you know, that can give them the independence to, you know, fulfill their roles without me having to micromanage. Well, then be that person.
Yeah.
Like, how would that person think? How would that person behave? What would that person speak like? How would they talk to their team? And start doing it now. Like, it's so empowering, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's such a good point, because it is this difference between, as you say, people say, oh, isn't that being fake if you're not being exactly who you are? But it's not that at all. That I hadn't heard that before, but act as if, and that's spot on the money.
Yeah.
Spot on the money.
I love it. I love it.
Well done. Well done, you.
Yes. So we've talked a bit about building relationships, building networks, building people that we can tap into, because we have to accept that we are never going to be the expert at everything. We can't possibly be the expert at everything. So we build that network around us. We've talked about the ability to act as if, to think about how we want to project ourselves, and start doing that now. What other qualities or traits do you think are really important to help us succeed in our leadership journey?
You're asking some cracking good questions. Do you know what? People might be surprised by this one, but I think one of the things that is most important in a good leader is being humble. Able to put yourself in somebody else's skin and see how they're feeling. Anyone can walk over the top of people, but true leadership is about being able to bring people with you, and have people to engender a respect that comes about because you understand the people you're leading, that you're not too big for your boots. There's just people who just think they're the bee's knees to just drive me nuts. They're just so boring. But that ability to be humble in being a leader, I think, is really, really important.
I like that. I like that. And I think...
Yeah, I was just going to say, because I've often said, the minute you think you're better than somebody else is the minute you're not. And I think if you take that through sort of with leadership, if you sort of believe you're much better than everybody else, you're never going to be as good a leader as you could be.
Yeah. Yes. I think, again, like, I'm just reflecting back on my journey to where I'm at now. And I know I've still got a lot of growth to go. Like, I've got a lot to learn, a lot of life to experience. And I'm sure, like, my views on this are going to change in the next 10, 20, 30 years. But I look back on the 20 years of working that I've done. And I think, the definition I put to leadership back in my early 20s was that you had to know everything. You had to be in control of everything. You had to, it was very black and white, and you had to be all over everything, and you had to be making sure everyone was doing the right thing. How do you define great leadership now? Like, we've talked about traits. Like, what is the role of a leader to you?
Being able to inspire people.
Yeah.
I think being able to inspire people to be the best they can be. I think a really good leader builds strong teams, that people that work with that leader are really happy and keen to work together, that they have a bond that sort of wraps around the team under the leader. Those sort of things, I think, are really important. And being able to, really good leaders are able to devolve responsibility and trust other people to do things, and not necessarily want to do everything themselves and have complete control. And that takes a bit of courage sometimes, I think, letting control go as a leader, and being able to devolve some of the responsibility and give it to somebody else as part of the team. So
I don't know about you, but I have found, since I've had kids, that there is so much. There are so many leadership lessons we can learn from being parents, and there are so many parenting lessons we can learn from the world of work and business. And just the other day, I asked my 11-year-old, I was in the middle of doing dinner, and I heard the washing machine beep, and I'm like, can you just get the stuff out of the washing machine? There's only 3 things, and can you just hang them on the line for me? Because I thought, I'll just forget. my brain was all busy, I'll just forget. And, you know, huffing and puffing, but he did it. And then later on that evening, I walked past the washing line and I looked at it and I was just like, you know, like shivers went through me at, you know, where he'd put the pegs and how he'd hung things up. And even the line, which line on the washing line he'd hung it on, because no, that's the t-shirt line and he's put the jumper there, you know.
It's all about your OCD. Yeah.
Like, I'm learning to let it go. I used to have to use the same color pegs on each side of a t-shirt and things like that. I'm learning to let that go.
I have similar issues around OCD, I think, Claire.
But the point I'm trying to make here is exactly, you know, just putting a real life example to exactly what you've just said. As in a leadership situation, like we have to let go of a bit of that control, don't we? Like we had a task that we needed to get done, which was have dinner and get the washing hung up on the line. I was looking after the dinner, so he looked after that, and how he did that was different to how I would do it. But it doesn't mean it was wrong. The clothes were still out of the washing machine, they were still hung up, and they were still dry by the morning. And I think, you know, that's something that, as you say, it takes practice, doesn't it? And it takes time to let go of that and to have that.
It really does. And boy, yeah, don't your children teach you? Sorry, excuse me. Don't your children teach you a lot? I mean, my boys are now, gosh, Will's nearly 29, Henry's nearly 27. And I remember back when they were much younger, they might have been around 11 and 9 or something like that, in the lounge room, and they were rumbling around all day. They were just having one of those boys' days. And, you know, my day, it was hectic, and by the end of it, I was just, it was just a little bit out of control. And I just sort of dropped it, as you do as a mother every now and then. I was like, well, yeah, stop rumbling around. And they just stopped and looked at me, and Will just said, Mum, it's interpretive dance. Which of course,
with it, Mum.
I'm just using it as an example of, you know, when you really think you're a bit tense about something, you know, something can happen and just really ground you and bring you back to earth and go, yeah, probably wasn't that much of a bother after all. I was worried about it. Anyway, it's pretty funny.
I think that's another great example of how we can put a lot of weight and pressure on ourselves, isn't it? Like a lot of I honestly believe a lot of the stress and a lot of the pressure that we feel, a lot of that weight that we feel is self-inflicted weight in how we believe we should be, or how we, you know, what we believe we should have ourselves over. You know, I should be over this. I should be, you know, I should be able to deal with this. I should be able to do that. There's so much weight we carry, isn't there? And sometimes
there really is. And I think we need to be more thoughtful about where we actually set our high jump bars for various things. You know, if we set them just impossibly high, we're never going to get over them. And by the same token, I don't think we should set them too low so they're easy to get over. But I just think everyone's got to find their own right level, which is something that's, it's going to push me a bit to get over that, but it's actually achievable.
Yeah.
Balance it too, I think.
Totally. And again, I'm like, I love these little tiny things that you say, and I pick up on like some like gold in there. Like everybody has their own level. Like you can be in the exact same level in an organization, or level of qualification, or level of experience, but that doesn't mean that your goal has to be the same as that person's goal, because they're like, it's such buzzwords, but their whole journey is different. Their whole lifestyle is different. Their ambitions, what success looks like to them is different, which is going to impact the goals that they set and what they're striving for and how they're working.
Yeah, and it's really important. I remember I was doing a talk at a school. It's been International Women's Day, and I'm talking about various things, and I was talking to the whole school, but particularly to sort of year 11 and 12 young ladies that were in the room. And I started, you know, when you're doing something, when you want to achieve something, the only measure is against yourself. Don't measure yourself against what other people are doing, because it's the wrong measure. It's just the wrong measure. If you set yourself your own, back to the high jump bar, your own thing that you want to attain, and then you meet it, you have absolutely achieved. And the other people, what other people are doing is just completely the wrong measure.
Absolutely. Again, like there's so I keep referring to my kids, but what this is what I mean. Like we can learn so much from everything all around us. Like we don't have to read the latest leadership textbooks or go on these you know, city-based courses, whatever, to learn the life lessons of true leadership. And, you know, like my 8-year-old brought his NAPLAN results home, and, you know, he was talking about so-and-so in his class got higher than this, or he got higher than this person and that person on this bit. I'm like, mate, like, ultimately, like, I don't know about some parents, but ultimately I don't care. Like, I don't care where you sat in relation to anybody else in your class. What I care about is, you know, your progression from start of the year to end of the year, and how you're developing as a person. And I think, you know, that's another great reminder, isn't it? Like, it doesn't matter what other people are doing. It doesn't matter how fast they're accelerating through the ranks compared to us. It's our journey. So cliche, so buzzword, but it's
but you're right, it doesn't matter. I can't stand the word journey either.
I know. That's why I almost cringe every time I say it. I'm like, I've got to find a better word.
I know, it's right up there for me with reach out. I can't stand that. But it is so interesting, and you know, often I'll say to people, particularly young people, if they ask me about bits and pieces or whatever, and I'll say, you know, there's no failure in not succeeding. There's only failure in not trying in the first place. So, you know, if you don't red hot crack at something and you really want to, and you stop yourself from doing it because you think you're not going to succeed, that's the failure bit, not having a red hot crack and then still not making it. You go, well, you've absolutely done your best against your own measure. You've had a red hot crack, and that's absolutely champion.
Absolutely. And there's always things you can learn from that. You know, get feedback. What can you improve for next time? What opportunities for growth are there? There's so much that we can take from setback. Again, if we are in the mindset of looking at it like that, aren't we? Like looking at it as a development tool, I guess.
And it's hard to do that when you're in things, and failure hurts. Like, it's awful when you do something and you don't succeed. And I'm not making light of that at all. If you want to do something and you strive to do something and you don't get there and it doesn't come off, it's really, really awful. But it's still much better than just having sat there and gone, no, not going to try it, not going to do it.
Yeah, I can imagine you have had plenty of experiences of that with that sort of such firm belief in what you're saying there. I would imagine you've lived your life like that. You've lived your career like that. So there will have been there would have been opportunities that you didn't get. There would have been things that you went through, like you talked about earlier, that you wish to God you didn't have to go through. How do you, as a person, pick yourself up from getting knocked down? How do you do that and come back stronger?
One step at a time. You don't, I think for me, you don't sort of think that you're suddenly going to wave a magic wand and you'll be over it and it'll be fine. It doesn't work like that. I just think just determination to just get over it and make it better, and take the good out of whatever the bad was. So I think a lot of it's just determination. I'm pretty stubborn, so I tend to grit my teeth and just, you know, one foot after another. So for me, it's kind of like that, and you just find, as after this, you know, really crap things have happened, that the steps get easier and easier and easier. So the first ones you take after, and I think with things, when things happen to you, and particularly if other people have seen something bad happen to you, you have the added thing of other people are looking at me thinking I'm hopeless. To the beginning of the conversation, I'm so stupid.
Yeah.
400 people out there think I'm stupid as well. And it's just trying to separate all that out and just let it go. You just got to let it go. You can't change it. My mother used to say all the time, the serenity prayer, and the actual words, of course, I can never remember. But effectively, you know, it's change the things I can, don't worry about the things I can't, and have the wisdom to know the difference. There's just no point in beating yourself up about stuff you can't change. There's just no point.
Absolutely.
And focus on the stuff you can change. So I think in terms of the question and the bad things that happen, you just one step at a time.
I think that's such great advice. And we can ruminate, can't we? We can loop we can tell ourselves stories and, oh, that happened because of this, and I'm such a this, and this always happens to me, and see, I told you I wasn't good enough, and we can sit there, we can sit there in that victim loop if that's what we want. But there comes a point where we have to step up and take responsibility, pull up our big girl or big boy pants and go, okay, what am I actually getting out of sitting in this like spiral of self-pity? Like how is this serving me? How else could I think about this? How am I going to get myself out of this? What am I going to do differently? And as you say, then it's just a case of one foot in front of the other, one step at a time, isn't it?
Absolutely. And focusing on a positive, whatever it might be. And when, everybody has difficult times and everybody has things happen, in their work life or whatever that they have to deal with, you focus on a positive thing. And I remember sort of after some of my difficult times, I'd just sit there in the morning and I'd watch the sun come up and go, that's beautiful. And you know what? That's going to happen again tomorrow, and it's going to happen the day after that, and it's going to happen the day after that. So just focusing on something that's really positive and makes you smile, no matter what it is, when it's difficult, that just helps those steps either get easier and easier.
Absolutely. And it starts to elevate our thinking, doesn't it? When we elevate our thinking, we get that, well, I certainly do anyway, you get that little, like, those little butterflies in your tummy again. It's that the excitement. It's like, okay, all right, I can do this. I can come out the other side. And that then ripples, doesn't it? As soon as we start to like just elevate our thinking just a little bit, our whole energy changes. And then suddenly, someone will bring morning tea in and we'll have a piece of chocolate cake. And then, someone else will say, hey, that project that I needed you to finish by tomorrow, the deadline's been extended till next week. And, all these things suddenly just start to happen. And it's not just this sudden coincidence. It's just, we're starting to notice the good things instead of dwelling on the bad things. And that just is a self-fulfilling prophecy to then move ourselves forward and make ourselves feel better, isn't it?
So true. So true.
Love it. Love it. What have you, like, we've talked about so much. There's so many things you've learned, so many things you've experienced, so many things you now realize. What I find I find it in myself, and what I find when I'm talking to a lot of leaders and business owners, is that there are things that they have put in place to help them navigate life and all the stuff that inevitably happens. Like, what are some of the things that you do for you, be they professional, be they personal? Are you a morning exerciser, a walker, a journaler? Like, are there things that you have had to put in place for you to help you be the best version of yourself that you can be?
I don't know. I think about it that deeply. I am really OCD, so I'm very organised. I suppose I try and being orderly for me helps me be the best version of me that I can be. If I'm getting disorderly or untidy or things aren't routine or whatever, for me, that's not something that fits very well with me.
Rattles you.
So routine, I think, is probably a good thing. Not that I mean that's the same thing every day, but I do like to do things in an orderly pattern. In the morning, go for a trot, which is nowhere near anything anyone could call a run. It's definitely a trot. But just doing that sort of before the sun comes up, that's really nice. And I just think having space around is really helpful.
Yeah. I'm a definite one for routine as well. Like, and I know in myself that if I rebel, if I've got too strict a regime around me, I'll rebel against it, even if that's a regime or a routine that I've set myself. Like, I must get up at 6 o'clock and do a half an hour workout every morning. Like, even if I set it myself, I'll rebel against it. I'm like, I don't want to do that today. So I know that I need to set myself a loose structure that allows my need for variety to be met. So, I might do half an hour HIIT workout. I might do 20 minutes of yoga. I might do 3 minutes of a song workout. I might do nothing. And I'll go for a walk later on once the boys are on the school bus. But, I have a loose routine, and I know for me that when that routine is thrown out of whack, like with homeschooling and things like that, it really impacted how I performed, because I'm like, gosh, I don't have my thinking time after I get out of the shower and have a coffee, because I've got, Mom, can you help me with this? And Mom, I'm like,
I think your voices.
I think like it again, like we've spoken about the whole way through, like it doesn't matter what it is, does it? It doesn't matter if Joe in marketing gets up at 4 a.m. and meditates for 3 hours before having a cup of green tea watching the sun come up. Like if that's how they start their day, awesome. Doesn't mean we have to do that to be successful. We just have to find what works for us, don't we?
It's just whatever works.
Yeah. I think a really cool place to like this. I could just keep talking to you. I love our conversations.
Me too.
But if you could give your 21-year-old self one piece of advice, just one, what would that be?
Oh, gee. I would probably say be more thoughtful.
Be more thoughtful.
Mm.
I love it. I love these responses. Because there's so much, isn't there? There's so much that we could say. So if I'd be more thoughtful, as in be more, you tell me. Yeah. What do you mean by be more thoughtful?
I think the more you wander through, the more that you wander through life, the more you are able to put yourself in other people's skin and see how they're feeling and how they're doing things and how their understanding is. And you can just, I think, see things a lot more from other people's perspective and get a lot more empathy. Whereas I think, the 21-year-old me was a lot more self-focused than I'm hoping, the 56-year-old me is. So I hope I'm more thoughtful now than I was then. And so that's what I'd say to myself back then.
I think that's fabulous. I really do. I would have to agree. That would be that's a really important thing. It's seeing different perspectives, appreciating that our way is our way and what's right for us isn't necessarily right for someone else. And that doesn't mean that it's better or worse or whatever. It just is for us. Such great advice. Thank you so much. I've absolutely loved this conversation. I trust everybody watching has gotten some amazing value out of it. Any closing comments?
Just only what I say to people, if ever they ask for any sort of advice, if they're doing something, I say, just back yourself. Just back yourself. Just believe in yourself. Just turn the voices off in your head that are going, you can't do it, you're not good enough. Turn them off and just back yourself and go, I can do this.
Absolutely. And like we've said, worse happens. It's a learning experience. We do it differently next time and we move on.
Absolutely. And the good news is that quite often the best happens.
Absolutely. Fiona, thank you so much. It has been an amazing conversation. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Claire. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to The Winding Road. If you've loved this conversation, you'll be pleased to know there is an ebook to accompany this episode. In there, you will find all sorts of resources, including a written transcript of the conversation, the key learning points we chatted about, and the contact details for my guest. Be sure to grab your copy from the show notes section of wherever you're listening to this episode. I'm Claire Markwick. This was The Winding Road, and until next time, bye-bye.